Welcome to UIC United Faculty Bargaining Update. I'm Dave Crockett. My colleague and comrade, Becky Bernard, is not able to join me today, so I'm going to make this fairly quick. We have a lot of ground to cover because we haven't updated since the first maybe couple of bargaining sessions. Since then, a lot has gone on, and I'll try to capture it for you very quickly, but as thoroughly as can be. We had a bit of a pause in negotiations while we worked through an attempt by management to claim that the union failed to properly dot its I's and cross its T's in the demand to bargain, which was all nonsense. And so we ended up missing a scheduled meeting. So we missed one, and that has set us back a little bit in terms of time, but also in terms of trust. But we were back at the bargaining table last week. I'm recording this on Saturday, the 13th of June. So we were back at bargaining this past week, and we will be back at bargaining again on Monday. So at this point, what we can tell you is that management has definitely seen everything that we have to offer in terms of the contract. They've had the document in their hands. That's been months ago. We share a box folder with them, so we know that they've had access to the contract before we even began meeting. And then since we've begun actual bargaining sessions, we have taken our time during those sessions to present each individual article of the contract. Well, actually, contracts plural, because there is both a tenure track and non-tenure track contract. Those have probably 95+% overlap, but there are a few areas where they are a little bit different. But all of that has been presented to them formally in a face-to-face setting where they've had the opportunity to pose questions, both for clarification. They've also offered some feedback in terms of language that they would like to see. We have made some formal progress insofar as there are a handful of items where there aren't significant changes expected on either side. So we have been able to reach what is likely going to quickly be a tentative agreement on many of those articles, but there is much that remains to be discussed. So having seen all of our presentations, we being UIC United Faculty, we are waiting on their questions and counter proposed language. So again, get your calendars out. The next session will be on Monday, the 15th at 11:30 a.m. in Student Center East, room 603. So let's talk a little bit about where things are and where they are headed. So I'm going to highlight some of our key demands that are still on the table. We'll start with the important stuff, and that salary. And I won't talk numbers here, but you can see that stuff. You can certainly have access to the contract. Excuse me, there's a public tracker for the contract that's available online. That's going to be in your bargaining notices that come to you via email. So make sure you check your email for those, and you can follow along all of the proposals and get the details. So in terms of salary, compensation, and benefits, we have added, like, the big takeaways are that we have added some language to the contract that would specify the University of Illinois system as having responsibility for funding salaries. Certainly, as an outgrowth of the current contract, the system signs that contract, and we thought that made it clear that it's the system's responsibility to fund its obligations. But in practice, that has not always happened. In many instances, that has fallen to colleges, and colleges are now struggling based on that cost and many other costs. but really, the obligation to fund salaries belongs to the University of Illinois. That's who signs our checks. We have, of course, demanded that The University of Illinois raised the minimum salaries for full-time faculty. So you will see increased baselines on those salary numbers. Those are based on title and duration, so I won't get into the details here. But again, you can see that on the public tracker. The other main thing in terms of salary compensation and benefits, there's some new language that requires the university to acknowledge that there is salary compression in many different fields. And to address this issue, we have suggested a compression formula. We have added language that says the university needs to use a compression formula that everyone has access to, and we are suggesting what some of that language is. Other universities don't play this game where they do not acknowledge compression. And so we know that there's language out there, and we have pulled from some of that language to make sure that faculty are being treated fairly. Another of our key demands is in the area known broadly as institutional commitments. So this is what the University of Illinois is obligated to provide each member of the faculty. So that's distinct from salary and benefits. Institutional commitments is really about the overall work environment. So these are the things that the university system commits to create a productive working environment for its faculty. So we are demanding that we continue forward, and we made some good progress with the last contract on mental health provisions for students. And we would like to see more of a co-responder model for police involvement. And this isn't coming out of nowhere. It is coming out of many, many meetings with various committees, including the UIC that have included the UIC police, where these kinds of things have been talked about. And so the content here is not going to be new to the administration. We've made some demands around increased funding for computer and technology, and that funding be more or less available to faculty to use however they see fit. We are continuing to push further on the progress that we've made in the previous contract in terms of how buildings and grounds, right, and that part of the work environment for all of our faculty, and that includes having all gender restrooms in all of our buildings where there are restrooms. So we got some of that into some buildings. So we want to continue to push forward with that. Another key demand from us to the administration is about greater training in terms of policy, especially around human resources issues for our executive officers. We think that a great many grievances could be avoided, and other kinds of conflict could be avoided just by having better training for executive officers so they better understand the kinds of things that they can and cannot do. And so we think this is crucial. Building on prior work from that we've done in previous contract negotiations, we want to continue to push for a public transit benefit for faculty. So there are many faculty who are commuting in by car from long distances, and that's just how it is. But many of us are able to and proud to take public transportation into campus in alignment with the campus's green initiatives. The campus has funded students in this way, and we think it should just continue to fund faculty in the same way. There's some room to negotiate on this, but right now it's zero, and it should not be zero. And then finally, I think a new issue, certainly in light of the current climate around what's going on with immigration. A number of our international faculty have been impacted by everything going on with immigration, and we feel like the university could be doing more to help protect our faculty. And so we have provisions in the contract about the kinds of protections that faculty should be receiving. I won't go into detail about those. Again, you can consult the public tracker, but right now it's basically nothing. And so we can do better than that. One matter in terms of the structure. So right now the contract is 2 years in duration. That's what we are proposing. That will it takes account of the kind of uncertain period that we happen to be in right now. And let's hope that things within 2 years may be changing, but also it gives us an opportunity to begin to implement some things, see how they're going, and then get back to the bargaining table to maybe tweak some of them. Because we are finding that many of the things in the current contract that were really good kind of haven't been implemented well because really there's not been a lot of occasion for follow through that's not associated with grievance. And so a shorter contract puts us in the same room with management. We are finding in our back and forth now that there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't know about what's going on the ground, and a smaller contract duration might help us in that regard. Another issue that has become I won't say contentious. It's not contentious yet. Um, Diversity and affirmative action. So our contract includes an article where we not only express support for diversity and affirmative action on this campus, but we also demand union inclusion on any relevant campus-wide committee to diversity and affirmative action. And that can include lots of different kinds of committees. Um, that language is already in the contract. It has become clear to us that the university has maybe been interpreting that clause in a narrower way than we are comfortable with. And so we have some language, they propose some counters, and we're just going to have to see how that works out. But, we feel very strongly that a number of campus-wide committees directly touch on diversity and affirmative action kinds of issues, even if that's not in the title. And we've never been refused entree into a committee before, and so we want to make sure that labor is being represented when these issues arise. Really, a related area is faculty governance or shared governance, and we just recognize that putting aside the issues that we have on this campus nationwide, faculty governance is very much under attack, and we want to see it strengthened here at UIC. And so, we have some very specific things, but the one thing that I'll highlight that's really kind of a major change is that we are proposing and demanding that executive officers provide a rationale when faculty governance comes in the form of, or I should say faculty shared governance comes in the form of an advisory committee. We recognize that executive officers may need to diverge from time to time from the advice that they are given in a shared governance setup, but often that is happening, and it's not clear that anyone has listened to that advice, and they've certainly not responded to it. So we are suggesting language that makes EOs responsible for providing at least a basic rationale for when they refuse advisory committee advice. Um, I will note here that promotion and tenure is a separate process that is governed pretty much entirely by the statutes. And so, this is for, more everyday working matters. Right now, management has been very opposed to any language of the sort. And so we imagine that this is going to continue to be an area of contention. But the fact is that shared governance on this campus is just not what it should be. This is not a corporation, it's a university. And in universities, governance is shared, and we want to make that meaningful at UIC. To that end, we have also offered that there are times when faculty do not behave in ways that are becoming of faculty at UIC, and that fall short of expectations. And there are moments when faculty discipline has to occur, and that this is the province of management. Absolutely, like this is a thing that has to be their right. However, we do suggest that there are areas of what are effectively due process that need to be strengthened, and so we have demanded on the tenure track faculty side specifically. Non-tenure track faculty have a disciplinary system that's set up, and it's relatively standardized, and so we've kind of left that alone. On the tenure track faculty side, there's just a lot of gray area, and so we have added language that we hope clarifies some of those issues and that inputs a system that is progressive in its character. The first time there's an occurrence, if it is something out of control, out of hand, people can always be fired for cause. We're not even dealing with that because that's set in stone. But there are instances where, there's a misunderstanding, someone falls short of expectations, right? We say verbal counseling, continued things, we move on to a write-up that goes into the personnel file, suspension with pay, suspension without pay, and all the way up to and including dismissal. Management has shut that down entirely. Their contention at the moment is that there are problems with our language and their consistency with the statutes, the University of Illinois statutes. We do not quite agree, but we do see that there is some room there, some wiggle room there, and there may be an opportunity to address some of the concerns that are shared by both the union and by management through a side letter that may at least offer some guidance on the matter. So we are looking forward to getting back to the bargaining table to talk about this a little bit further. On the non-tenure track side, in terms of faculty appointment and reappointment, um, a lot of what we have offered here is cleanup language. There's so much gray area here. One of the big issues that continues to come up for faculty is the so-called visitor loophole, where it appears that departments, at least on occasion, are hiring visiting faculty who, as you know, are limited in term to teach recurring courses. So introduction to whatever is being taught by visiting faculty, and that's really not what that title is for. And that in fact, it appears that some units are using visitors to do an end run around hiring full-time faculty. So, that's a problem for us. In addition, there's like a lot of non-standard information about people's appointments that should properly go on to their notice of appointment that they get annually, and we want to see that language standardized across faculty. And so we're going to hold fast to some of that. Some of this really is areas where I'm not sure that everyone knows what actually happens on the ground. So we've been talking back and forth about that, and I remain hopeful that we can make some progress there. And so there, I think there's less contention and more questioning, and everybody's just trying to figure out exactly what's going on and exactly what's needed. And then kind of the last major area in terms of what we have presented most recently has to do with union membership and activity. And here I'll just note, this is an area where we felt like the administration got a bit petty. So we have for a long time had, or at least I should say, during the run of the current contract, at least, we have had course releases for the president and chief steward who spend a lot of time talking with administration, kind of off the clock, going to meetings, et cetera, et cetera. It's a big job. And so it is quite appropriate for a course release. And the university wants to claw that back, or at least claw one of those course releases back. And We're not having that. That's absurd. So that is something that we're going to push on, because a course release is effectively a trivial kind of cost for the university. That this is just, again, it's being petty. And so, if they want to fight about this, we can fight about it. All right, so those are kind of the main things in terms of kind of what we've been able to present, and where we're hoping to get further feedback. And so we'll keep you posted on what's going on, and we will talk to you soon. Peace.